Greetings, everyone. As Set Them Free, today we are with a great young human rights advocate, Tahmina from Afghanistan. I know dear Tahmina from 2018 as she was one of our young speakers at the UNGA conference organized by the Journalist Emeritus Foundation. She came to New York all the way from Afghanistan to present her remarks at the panel discussion, The Culture of Peace and Conflict Prevention. She's a great, passionate young advocate with a great vision, promoting the role of quality education for the social and economic empowerment of girls in Afghanistan. And with her remarkable academic success, she won the first place in the Afghan University entrance exams too. Tahmina has been a change maker in her local community with her leadership, working for the girls' empowerment and promoting their rights. And being raised in a conflict zone, she, of course, knows and she's a witness of the role that education plays in transforming our societies. Tahmina, thank you so much for accepting our invitation. I know that the last couple months have been very challenging for you, your family, your loved ones, and of course, the dear people of Afghanistan. I presented a very, very brief introduction for you, but I know you have so much to share with us. And before we move on with our topic today, would you like to tell us about yourself a little more?
Thank you for having me. My name is Tahmina Payenda. I am 21. I was born in Kabul, Afghanistan. I spent my childhood years there, my teenage years. I joined the university entry exam in 2018. I was admitted into Kabul University of Medical Sciences, where I studied medicine for about a year and a half before I fled Afghanistan in 2020. I have been living as a refugee in Tajikistan ever since. And lately I got admitted into Columbia University School of General Studies, where I think of majoring in psychology more probably.
Congratulations on your admission too, first of all. You're a great role model. I believe your success will lead many other friends of yours as well. So going back to our discussion today, of course, the whole world, our global community has been following this devastating humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan as the Taliban continues to crack down all freedom of expression, all forms of civil, political, social rights in the region, and tens of thousands of people are displaced both internally in the country and many have been evacuated as enforced migrants, refugees. So you are a young activist. I know that you have been following this horrendous crisis in Afghanistan very closely, sharing your views, speaking up on social media too. And I would like to ask you from what you have witnessed from the tellings of your parents, your elderly members in your family, how was it back in late 90s in Afghanistan under Taliban rule? Their representatives are claiming that they have changed, but I want to hear a little bit more about your opinion. What do you think on their stance? Do you really believe that the regime has changed, or what are your thoughts about it?
Well, back in the 1990s, my parents always tell me about that era. It was a very dark time for all the Afghans living. In Afghanistan, there was no freedom of speech. There was no freedom of movement even, especially for women who were forced to stay at home. They didn't have the right to go to school. All girls' schools got closed. And all the universities got closed for them, so they could not get an education at all. They were not allowed to go out to work. Even they were forced to wear a burqa, although that notion of wearing a scarf or a hijab is not something against our religion and against our culture. But when they're forcing it upon people, that's where the problem comes out. People don't like to do something that they're forced to. Instead of bringing them closer to religion, this actually drives them away. So back in the time, my mother, she was forced to stay home, and there was no freedom of speech. all TVs. It was illegal to have TVs at home. No one was allowed to play music or to see TV soap operas for children, kite running, which is a very famous time pass for Afghan children. It was totally illegal. I would say it was a very, very dark era in Afghanistan, and now it has repeated itself in our history. And right now, Taliban are saying that they are publicly, they announced statements that they would comply with human rights, with women's rights, but I don't personally believe any of that. Since the real thing that we should look at right now is what they're doing on the ground, what is happening to Afghan women in Afghanistan as of right now. Just 3 days ago, there were massive protests happening in Kabul and other provinces where women stood at the front. Face to face with the Taliban, they demanded their rights for education, their rights to go out to work, their rights for freedom, or their rights to be involved politically in the government. And all of these protests, they were met with violence. Women had the slogans that a heroic cabinet is the one wherein women are present, or that if we stand together, we can break the oppression. But Taliban started firing even at the protesters. They beat the women who were protesting, just like in the 1990s. Would the world call that a change in how they're treating women? There were journalists who were trying to film the protests, but they were arrested. So many of them got arrested. And I guess 2 days ago, women in Dashtabachi, Kabul, they protested again for their rights. And 2 journalists, they were arrested, beaten to the extent that they could not even walk properly. Maybe you have seen their images on social media. There is no freedom of speech anymore in Afghanistan, as far as I'm seeing. What we need to do right now is we need to stand with Afghan women as much as we can do. On the very same day that they started protesting, we saw the Taliban announcing their cabinet, which was all consisting of men. No woman was present, and there was no ethnic diversity. What I would ask the whole world is that if they're announcing a cabinet like this, what can we expect them to do with other areas of the government or other areas of Afghanistan's social life? They will not let Afghan women, maybe even they will not let them join any type of activism, any type of journalism. They will be totally voiceless, I would say. And then in terms of education, they have allowed women to study, but they have some rules that women need to comply with. For example, they should be taught in separate classes, women in separate classes and men in separate classes. Women should only be taught by women teachers and men by men teachers, male teachers, which puts women at a greater disadvantage because we simply don't have enough female teachers to teach them. In terms of working outside, we see so many people, Afghans, who are turned back from their workplaces. A journalist from RTA, Radio Television of Afghanistan, was sent home just because she was a woman, and Taliban said that women cannot work in a TV channel. In terms of wearing, Afghan people, mostly women, they have been seen wearing colorful clothing as a form of defiance, but there are also reports that say Afghan women should only wear burqa. One of the journalists by the name of Stefan Glinsky, she's reporting right now from Afghanistan. She said that one day when she was passing from Jalalabad to Kabul, I think, on the way, their car was stopped by the Taliban, and then the driver was told that these 2 journalists, Stefan and one of her friends, although they were wearing full hijab, the Taliban told that driver that these two women should start wearing burqa instead. And if they don't, God will be angry at them, things like that. And there are also reports that women are not allowed to speak on radios, public radios, and that their voice is not okay to be heard. Afghans, especially Afghan women, have seen all of this nightmare before, and they're forced to relive all of these again. And we need to, I think, stand up with them as much as we can do.
Tahmina, thank you so much. You have covered many diverse areas in terms of freedom of expression, women's presence in social and economic life as well. And you touched upon the fact that even though the Taliban spokesperson has made specific commitments to respect women's right to work and girls' right to access quality education, we do know that the reality on the ground is way different than their promises, and their approach to women and girls in all spheres of life is no different than what it used to be. And as you mentioned, Afghan women and girls, all human rights activists, so to say, have been fighting fiercely to attain their rights in social, civil, political life since the last couple of decades, and we should really stand by them, stand in solidarity with them to protect all these gained rights. And Afghan people know that Taliban is still the same brutal extremists. So they have lived this life nightmare before, as you perfectly presented this overview. And currently, there are many international human rights organizations, women's rights movements. They're mobilizing, raising awareness over social media to call on intergovernmental authorities to take immediate actions as well. There have been some evacuation processes and so on. But as a young activists, and you've been the voice of Afghans in these critical times as well, can you advise our audience, us, what do you expect in terms of solidarity? Can you let us know some concrete actions that we can take as civil actors?
Right, the first and foremost thing I would like the public people of the world to do is that they should pressure their governments not to accept the Taliban's government. They are the same brutal people, as you said, like before, and they haven't changed even a little bit. So I would say no one should accept their government. That's the very important starting point. And then all of the people of the world, especially the feminists, those who care about women's rights, they should stand by Afghan women. There are currently protests happening all around the world by Afghan people in solidarity with Afghans and Afghan women. We should join them and we should speak out against all the Taliban abuses that's happening right now in Afghanistan. There are also people who have been left abandoned, those who have worked with Afghanistan's previous government and those who have worked with foreign embassies, foreign NGOs. Their lives are in imminent danger right now. We should ask that the world should open up their borders, they should embrace them, and they should accept them as refugees inside their countries. They should be evacuated as soon as possible. And then there are other countries who are also responsible for what's happening in Afghanistan. As much as I want to stay away from the politics, but all of this are happening right now, and it endangers Afghan people, my people. So I want to call on all the people of the world to stand up with us and hold all of the governments that are responsible for this. Pakistan has been training terrorists for 20 years, and just today I heard from a relative of mine that there is a group of Taliban who don't speak Pashto or Farsi. They only speak Urdu, which means that they have more probably came from Pakistan. And then there are other countries like Qatar that have accommodated them. They have provided them a place to live in. They are all terrorists. They have been recognized globally as terrorists. And all of these countries, they legitimize them. the US had actually created them back in the 1990s, and then they left Afghanistan in the hands of them, came back and occupied Afghanistan for 20 years. And now they're leaving Afghanistan back in their hands. It is a form of betrayal, not even an abandonment. They came in with the name of war and terror, but all they did was funding Taliban at the same time through Pakistan. I would say people of the world should hold all of these countries accountable. They should provide an answer for what they're doing. And also there are other human right channels, human rights advocates like Human Rights Watch or other humanitarian organizations that have been very silent about what's going on in Afghanistan. They should speak out as well.
Definitely. And I was going to ask, but you covered it a little bit, but I was wondering if you have any friends, relatives back in Afghanistan that you are still in communication. Do you know how is the life going on in Afghanistan these days? How is the current situation? Any more points that you want to add?
Well, I would say right now in Afghanistan, people are very depressed, especially women. They don't know what's going to happen to them in the future, if there will be any education for them, if they will have the right to go out freely. They don't know any of that. They're like very depressed as of right now. And then there is also Panjshir province in Afghanistan, which is the only place that Afghans are currently fighting the Taliban. They are our only hope for a free Afghanistan. Currently, they are cut from the rest of the world as they have no internet. Their internet has been cut by the Taliban. No aid is allowed to get in there in terms of food and other essential needs. And then there are people of Panjshir who have sought in mountains, and they're starving right now. And whenever they try to come down, they are dead. They're shot dead on the spot by the Taliban. I would like the people of the world to stand with them as well. And then in terms of how we see future for us, Afghan women, we don't see anything bright. We cannot stay hopeful at the same time. It is a very dark era. All we can do is hope for the best, for whatever comes.
Yeah, Tahmina, thank you so much for all the remarkable comments on what's going on. You really provided a perfect overview, analyzing this issue from very different angles, and your messages were quite empowering for everyone to really take a stance. And I really admire your advocacy work, raising awareness on what's going on in Afghanistan. Youth voice is very critical these days because they're more powerful than anyone else, and girls' empowerment, of course, is very important. And I really admire your strong stance to promote the rights of your people, the Afghan people, and I wish all the best to you in your studies in Columbia University. And as you mentioned, things are not in track, but we still have to be in solidarity. We still have to watch over on calling our governments accountable, intergovernmental organizations to take an immediate and urgent action. So we'll be here promoting the rights of Afghan women and girls, and we're looking forward for better days ahead. Thank you so much, Tahmina. Thank you.
Thank you so much as well.